Hello everyone, it's me again. I'm telling you, I'm more up here than down there today, but I totally don't mind because we have really good topics. That's what we usually do. And I know we had this topic yesterday already, a little bit, on the KYC side. And I know some people, when you mention KYC, like I said yesterday, it seems a dry topic. I don't think it is, because it is, in an ever more regulated world, it's the foundation of what we operate on, how we stay compliant, how we keep our regulators happy, and we want to keep our regulators happy. But as someone, I've worked 20 years ago with operators, then I ran companies 10 years ago, and I've seen the sort of changes. 20 years ago, we had folders full of printed passports. There was a company that did this as a service. They would send you loads of folders from every country. They would give you sample IDs, and then once a month you get an envelope with new ones. And then the customer service team would get a passport from a country and compare it. And then the first electronic guys came along to do KYC. The first, online just do it as a service. But they were only until very recently, maybe 1, 2, 3 big players. We all know who they are. And then suddenly there were loads. Something happened, and suddenly there were loads of KYC providers and verifiers. Now, you're one of the older guard. What happened? How did it suddenly go from one to so many? And, is there so much interest? Is there so much potential? Is it such an important thing?
Thanks, Frank. Hi, everyone. My name is Marvin. I'm the regional director at Jumio. So at Jumio, we really specialize in eKYC and identity verifications. But just going back a little bit to how Jumio was founded and kind of like relate to, Frank, your question, right? So Jumio was actually founded by one of our founders, and he actually came for a vacation. And it was during his vacation that somebody actually sent a parcel to him. And the challenge at that time was, how does this person verify that our founder was really the person that he wants to deliver the parcel to, because it's not there, right? And it took him a long process to even prove that he is who he said he is. And that's the kind of concept and idea, and it kind of like created the whole eKYC space. Because the whole idea we're trying to do here is, how do I prove I am who I say I am without having a face-to-face relationship, right? And if let's say everything was done, all the businesses are done offline, you see the persons, there's no need for the eKYC. It's really because a lot of the businesses, they are trying to tap on the online revenue. And at the same time, there's a lot of online business to be done, but at the same time, there's also risk associated with it, right? Essentially, the question we want to ask is, how do I trust that you are who you say you are, because I didn't see you? And that's the whole concept of eKYC. It's all about trust, right? So I need to trust I'm dealing with an authentic person. And because of the online penetrations and a lot of the businesses trying to tap onto the online market, that's why the business kind of boom. And a lot of eKYC companies kind of like come into the place and wanted to provide these kind of services to facilitate the online transactions. So that's really where the whole concept comes from. And that's really where our strength comes in, because we are actually the first companies that gets into this place. And so far, we've processed more than 1 billion transactions from a global level. So that's the kind of scale and the scale that we operate in globally. Yeah.
And now you're more in the local market and expertise, where of course things are absolutely booming now, which we wouldn't have seen. A year ago, we wouldn't have thought, oh, the Philippines is done, the Pogos are leaving, it's going to shut down. And suddenly Pigo, and we are more booming than ever before in a much better, healthier, sustainable way. And that's because we have regulations, and Paco is of course quite strict. But this whole KYC thing, and we spoke about this yesterday as well, it's more than just verifying who a customer is, right? I mean, there's many, many more things you can do with that information. You should do with that information. Like looking at the local market, what are the sort of things that it's being used for, apart from proving that I am who I am?
I guess my name is Krizia. Good afternoon, everyone. So from a business standpoint, KYC, the information we get from KYC is pretty much like the first information that we as a business get to know who our customers are or who our players are, right? For that information, it's not just a verification thing for us. It's more of really the data from that we can use to better our services and provide what kind of games we can create, and also from a marketing perspective, also get to know who those people are that we really cater to, we need to tap as well.
Now, all your competitors who are, Pigos, they will be in the room taking notes, but especially looking at the local market or at Asia, what's the attitude towards being asked for ID? Are people okay with it, or is it something where you need to offer an incentive to do it? Or because there are certain areas, like I think Japan, they're probably okay. They will read it and then I'll trust you. But is there something in other areas and other markets where you need to persuade them, or they're okay with it?
I think people may argue that, I don't really want to spend a lot of time uploading my IDs, uploading my selfies. I just want to get onto the platform and start playing, right? But on the other side, if I'm a player and I get onto a platform and I see that the platform is asking for my IDs and probably ask for a little bit more information about myself, as a user, I feel more confident about the platform because I know the platform is taking efforts to protect me and protect my funds, right? So I'm more likely to come back to the same platform to play because I know there's a trust. I can trust this platform. So I think it kind of relates to the topic. It's all about trust. So for the platforms, it has to trust that the users are who they say they are. And for the users, it's the same. I have to trust that the platform is taking serious measures to protect my funds, right? So I think people can argue one way or another. And for us, we try to streamline the user experience at the same time protecting them from all these kind of frauds. So I think user experience is definitely something that we put a lot of highlights on as well.
From a local perspective, like the way Filipino behavior is, there are certain segments that you have to incentivize. However, right now, Filipinos are also getting used to providing information as, like for the online gaming space, it's growing. So they're kind of getting used to already to providing personal information such as IDs as well, because they know that it's part of regulations and also the operators' operations.
And I guess the fact that we are now regulated and it's government sanctioned and legal, that probably helps in the trust question a lot, right? Because otherwise, with grey market operators, you never know where your data goes. And the Philippines has sufficient safeguards in data protection laws, which are actually quite strict here, which sometimes very, very strict, that you do have the trust of the people to do that. But in terms of, and this is one for you, I've dealt with numerous KYC providers in the past, all over the world, and a lot of the operators I worked with and for to do that. They have markets all over the world. It seems some KYC providers, they just cover a couple of regions and that's it. And the sales brochure always says, oh, we do the world. And if you dig into it, they only do certain things, or in certain countries they can only do this, and they're basically useless to you. Like, how do you differ, and what is the biggest challenge with all the different IDs all over the world, and how to make sense of this? Because we're global operators.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that's a very good question, and it's a question that I often got asked by prospects or customers. So I would make 2 points there. I think the first point is Jumio is actually the first one in the industries, and we've been operating in the industry for the longest period of time. And the good thing about that is we have obtained a lot of detailed data, and ultimately the quality and the accuracy of the KYC checks really matters, because if you get it wrong at the first time, you're going to spend a lot of effort at the subsequent steps, right? So we always want to make it right at the first time. And the accuracy and the quality of the checks actually depends on how good your model is, and that also depends on how much data you have accumulated. Because the more data that you have processed, the more accurate, the model is going to be, right? So I think that's definitely one of the areas that we are very proud of ourselves. And another thing that we're trying to do is, because we have this huge amount of data already, we think that this is a very valuable data set, right? And we want to make use of it. But how do we kind of like make use of it? I can give you an example, right? So imagine like I'm a user, I get onto a platform, this is the first time I get onto this platform. And from the platform operator's point of view, it knows nothing about me. But what if I tell you that, actually I've seen this person from somewhere else, and this person has committed 5 fraudulent transactions before. So immediately, that is a very useful information that you can use, because probably you want to straight away reject these applications because this user has done many fraudulent transactions before with other platforms. So this is something that we think potentially may add a lot of value, because according to our studies, most of the transactions, like more than 65% of them, they actually have done something before within our ecosystem. So it's like a shared network, right? So you want to contribute to the network, and at the same time, you also benefit from participating in the network. So we think that from this kind of collaborative effort, this is something that probably not a lot of players are able to do, simply because the amount of data that they acquire is not at that kind of scale. So I think this is something that Jumio is putting a lot of technical resources into developing. I think this is where the industry collaboration really matters, and this is where we want to go in the future.
This very much sounds like someone I would like to have if I'm an operator, to be honest. Going back to the Philippines, if you ask anyone who comes to the Philippines, he will say that what makes it great is the people. They're some of the friendliest, most welcoming, warm-hearted people in the world. How does that translate to the gaming experience online? Like, what are the great things about the Filipino players that you see? Because we say trust but verify. So and how far can we trust them? How nice are they? But what are also some of the challenges that you see with the people coming through the door?
I guess for challenges for Filipinos specifically, Filipinos are very creative, right? As much as our creativity translates to the games that we play that are locally infused, like the culture of the Filipino is infused with. The challenge also would be, in terms of KYC, Filipinos find ways to go around that.
You mean a trip down to Recto or something? Or?
Like, for example, like right now with AI, correct? Some of the challenges that we've also faced is that, like for our operations, our KYC process would be a mix of AI and human verification. And the reason why we did that is because with the creative workarounds of some sign-ups, like you see sign-ups that are photo edited, so that's why we had to add a layer of human verification there as well. So that's how, that's why, that's one challenge that we face as
So you're saying the best way to defeat AI is human?
Not necessarily. It's just that as a business, we also had to add a layer to it.
Actually, good that you mentioned the AI part, because we had this in previous conversations as well, how crazy this world is going. I brought this example of a writer friend of mine who creates content. Of course, he uses ChatGPT for it, but the guy who works for made it clear he shouldn't use ChatGPT for it, and he said he will check using an AI tool. So my friend writes with ChatGPT and then puts it for another tool that humanizes it to defeat this other tool that this guy is using to catch him out. The same thing, I think, is happening with AI and verification as well. We all know face swap apps. We all know instant avatars, real time, that create either a likeness of me or anyone else. I can create a character, and I have it look real, and it can do whatever I want to do. The likeness, the move your head, the selfie thing. How do you even plan for that? This seems like an arms race.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think with the AI is definitely hitting our industry very hard. There are a lot of tools out there in the market that you can access like almost for free to create all these kind of deepfake AI-generated synthetic images. I think for us, we kind of like take a multi-layer steps. First of all, we have to protect the device metadata, because if you create a AI-generated face or video or whatsoever, you still have to get past the device metadata in order to get the injections, video injections or photo injections. So that's always the first step. We always want to protect the device metadata. And then And then we also develop a lot of algorithms that specifically catches all these kind of deepfake attacks. Something that we noticed is sometimes even the face may change, but sometimes the background doesn't change because the fraudsters may be negligent. They just change the face, they didn't check the background, or these kind of things. We're always trying to build our models that tailor specifically for these kind of deepfake, AI-generated kind of contents. Of course, it's a constant battle, right? I mean, believe it or not, the fraudsters are always the first one to use all these kind of newest technologies to trick the system because there's a lot of financial incentive for them to do it. But for us, our stand is always we have to know what's happening in the market, what kind of technologies that we need to develop to tackle those challenges. We have filed more than 300 patents in those kind of advanced technologies that catch all these kind of deepfake attacks.
Wow, that's a lot. In terms of also the Philippines and this AI and the potential risks with it, do you see any of this happening? Like, people trying to catch you out with face swap apps or... And how creative are they? Are there some that are really like the hardcore fraudsters who are really seem sophisticated, or some are just the son trying to be dad on the face swap app?
Well, definitely. That's why also, like I mentioned, that's why we had to do 2 layers as well for our verification. Although it can be challenging, especially for us as an emerging company, and with the growth that we are at right now, we have to continuously improve, also review and improve our processes, and to ensure that one, there's a balance between seamless user experience for KYC, and also that we are in accordance to the regulations and we are consistently compliant to the ever-changing landscape here in the Philippines. So we try to employ, we review our processes, we review the technology that we also have, and of course we also look at what's out there in the market and see whether there are any partners that we can tap to complement or to support the business as well.
And you're certainly one of the the Pigos here that are being noticed everywhere. I see your ads everywhere. You're like one of the, when I said, there's 70 licenses and there's a few who rule the market, this is one of them. You are sort of shaping this landscape with everyone. But KYC and verifying a player, it can be seen, I mentioned it before as well, if I'm a player, it's something like, why are you asking me this? And if I'm an operator, I don't like it because it's a hurdle. How do you manage that here locally? Like, what's the smoothest way to get a Filipino player onboarded without putting them off by asking for stuff maybe too early or at the wrong time? Or how do you make this hurdle go away?
We try to make it as simple as possible. So right now we do partner with other payment channels that already have their own verification process. So that in itself, we hit kind of 2 birds with 1 stone, right? There's already KYC verification, but also we also already know, or we kind of guarantee already conversion as well. And then as I've mentioned prior, we consistently review also the processes that we have internally, whether they're still working or we have to change elements to that process just to adapt also to the business requirements and also how we can continuously improve the user experience.
And do you think the regulations at the moment, they are sufficiently strict or too strict, or is it working basically? Is it creating a safe playing field for players and operators?
I would say it's sufficiently strict. However, again, it's a growing industry. That's why we're consistently working with PAGCOR and also other compliance partners to ensure that we are compliant and also we are consistently providing that trust to our players and to our users.
And speaking of regulators, of course, you mentioned that all these AI tools and everything, technology is evolving fast and fast and fast. As we all know all too well, the tech usually works faster than the regulator. what are your challenges in terms of, because you see a lot of other markets as well, and for example with AI, ID checks and being allowed to legally use data or process player data in new ways, are there some challenges there where you see the regulators maybe need to catch up in some areas, or where you may be concerned in future that you get too far ahead of the guys making the rules?
Yeah, I mean, like for Jumio, we actually serve many gaming customers in Europe, US, Latin America, Brazil specifically. We do notice that the regulations at different paces, at different places. So like for some, for US, some US states, they have like very strict rules when it comes to the, the underage, player protections. And in Brazil, they, the user behave like also differently. They rather prefer to use like digital kind of identities rather than having a physical card in front of you and taking a photo of that. So I think that regulators and the user behaviors are definitely different from different places. But I think Philippines is a very interesting market. I think the regulation is catching up very fast, and I believe they also look at regulations from all over the world and try to see what are the things that they can learn from them. Like from my experience talking to the regulations here in Philippines, I think they are very open-minded, and they are willing to get to know what are our best practices with other regulators around the world and see which are the ones that are best suited for the market here. So I would say that overall the regulators here are very open-minded when it comes to the KYC regulations, and they are willing to cooperate with service providers like us, with platforms. So essentially, the goal is to create a safe environment for the industry as a whole.
And in terms of technology, we have heard in the past, and we've seen a lot of companies pop up that say they use blockchain for IDs and things. Is there still mileage on that? Is that still something that you see out there in your field, or is it sufficient to just do it your way rather than bring a blockchain in for everything?
I think when it comes to blockchain, of course, the fundamental idea is that everything on blockchain is kind of like immutable, and it's there forever, and then that can be used as kind of like a verification of who you are, right? But I think in terms of the adoptions, it probably still takes some time for it to be widely accepted. I mean, I will keep monitoring that space, but I would say it still takes some time for it to be widely adopted in the industry.
And I'm trying to think, so the Philippines were growing so fast. I want you to, obviously not give away secrets, but if I'm an operator who's starting out now, and you've been through this process already and you're quite successful with it now, what was sort of the biggest challenge in understanding the Filipino players, even though they're local? But for example, if I was to launch a sportsbook in Germany, I would still have to study, what was sort of the biggest the challenges in knowing and understanding your customers when you set out on this journey?
Well, for one, Filipino players are very nuanced, so you have to understand behaviors and psychographics of Filipinos, right? They're not your typical Asian players as well. A lot of culture, a lot of, you can say, apart from cultural elements, there are very specific behaviors that only Filipinos have. So let's say, for example, they want to get their money's worth, right? So you have, from the KYC perspective, you have one challenge would be a lot of bonus abusers. So those things, especially if you're a new company, those are normally the challenges that you face. And then again, like I've mentioned, the creativity of going around certain parameters or certain prohibitions, that's also a challenge that we have to face with the Filipino market.
And I'm trying to think, is there so the Philippines is a pretty young market in terms of the industry, but also in terms of players as well. They're relatively new, it's all mobile first. What's the older generation like here? Are they okay with being asked to prove who they are? Do they understand? Or what are the oldest players that you sort of get here? Because is it all just kids on there who are totally okay with it, who have a different attitude to what's being asked? Because it seems generally our attitude towards being asked for data seems to have changed. Like 10, 20 years ago, it was very private. It's like, why do you need to see my ID? Why do you need to know this? Now, has it changed with the young generation? Are there generational differences in attitudes?
Well, from the data that we have, our players are a little younger. So I guess most of, I wouldn't say older, but more seasoned gamers.
Or like me, like 40. Something
Yes. They would probably prefer more land-based, just primarily because a lot of Filipino older generations aren't as techy. They're not as, I mean, they do engage on social media behaviors, right? However, when it comes to playing, most of them would prefer, like the older generations would likely prefer land-based casinos rather than online. So that's what our data, the data that we've gathered, that's what we're seeing right now.
And extending that then to you, because you're the international guy again. How does that play into what you offer as a product out there? Like, not everyone gets the same KYC journey, right? How do you split it in demographics? Are there different approaches to the TikTok kid who doesn't care? Always data is like, yeah, you want my ID, whatever, have it. And people are more reluctant. Do you create different journeys for them? Do you create, different ways to get over that hurdle?
Yeah, definitely. So we are a software as a service companies. So that means our service can be plugged into a specific process depending on how the operators want to design their process. So for some customers in some jurisdictions, they tend to be more strict. They tend to ask for more information, even like the bank statement, utility bills, and your home address, and trying to prove you really live in this address, right? In some countries, but in some other countries, they probably ask for less documents. But for us, our solution is really customizable to fit into specific workflows that comply with the regulations in that countries. So I mean, we do have all the fundamental building blocks. It's just a matter of how you want to plug it together.
And back to the Philippines, because I love the Philippine market and everyone wants to learn more about it. What are some of the challenges when it comes to verifying who people are? Because I know there's a national ID, but not many people have it. They're trying to push it out, but it's not something you necessarily need. Not everyone has a Meralco bill. Are there any challenges where you have to find workarounds or
I guess one workaround we did was really partner with the payment gateways, right? Because, like you've mentioned, most Filipinos don't necessarily have the primary ID that most of us require. So with payment channels, they have their own verification processes that would verify already the users that we are targeting.
That's actually a really good idea, because then, and that's permissible that a third party is basically saying this player is okay. That's actually, I've seen that happen before. That's okay to use here.
In terms of KYC, like just the verification of the identity, however, again, we do still follow the parameters of PAGCOR and also the other regulations to be compliant, your age, those, and also age and also affiliation to the government, right? Those things we have to review as well. And that's why we have to ensure that we always discuss and work closely with our partners to ensure that those data points are aligned with us so that we are compliant.
And in terms of, you mentioned age and obviously this being a young market, are there a lot of people who shouldn't be playing trying to play? Are you catching them? Are they like clever in trying to get around the age restrictions, or is it a big issue here, or is it just a small percentage?
I would say a very small percentage. Us specifically, we haven't really gotten any challenges in terms of age, underage signups. Most of our players are really 21 and up as per our verification in-house using our AI and also our teams and also with the payment gateways and partners that we have.
And going to you again on the, Philippines, but also international. Knowing that maybe not everyone has a local ID, not everyone has an electricity bill around here because you sometimes just don't need it, or you still live at home and whatnot. How do you get around that sort of thing? For example, I had clients, some client in Africa who is a completely legit guy, runs a company and everything, but his home address is just so out there in the sticks somewhere that any provider, when I try to open his company, they just say, oh, we don't know what this is. How do you get around all these local massive differences and quirks in what's acceptable? It must be a massive task.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why a lot of the different nations are having their national digital identity initiatives. So these kind of things, like for example in Brazil, a lot of I think more than 30% of the populations already have a digital identity on their mobile phones, which means that even if I don't have my ID with me, I can simply use my mobile apps to access my digital IDs and get onto the platforms. I think the digital ID, this is kind of like an initiative that many countries are trying to follow suit. The same thing applies, like for example in Singapore. I'm from Singapore, so we do have the SingPass. So meaning that I would just use that one account and I can apply to a lot of different applications. So I think this is going to be a trend going forward. More and more countries are trying to get on board with this initiative.
And first Philippines, then international. Is desktop actually still a thing, or is everyone here on mobile? Like if I'm starting out now, should I just design all my whole journey from KYC to everything else just purely for mobile? Is there a point in desktop?
Right now with the Philippines, I wouldn't say so. We do have a lot of infrastructure that we still need to improve to be fully digitalized, right? So that's why we try, as a business, we try to make sure that we make our user journey as smooth as possible, following what is available to the general public or the Filipino mass that we are trying to target in terms of the games.
And what's the channel split roughly in terms of between mobile and desktop? It's majority mobile, isn't it?
Majority mobile, but
Like majority,
mobile, but you still have that desktop mix.
Okay, so who are those people? People in offices or grandpa sitting at home?
That's what we're actually trying to study right now as well.
When you find out, and how is it internationally? Is it all like? Are you purely now designing all your journeys and all the additional bits that you gain from it, purely for mobile, or other markets where the desktop still rules?
I mean, we definitely support all kinds of integration channels, whether that's mobile or web, or even like web on a mobile, right? So it's like all kind of different channels. But I think for emerging markets, definitely mobile has more market share in terms of the the users. But I think for some European, US countries, some people they still prefer to play on laptops, or web. That's still a case.
And we have about 3 minutes left. So if you had one tip, if I'm starting out now, when it comes to KYC, what's the one thing that I need to look at? Starting with you, and then.
I think the most important thing is the change of mind, I would say, because traditionally people may think KYC as a bottleneck for me to onboard users, but I think that kind of mindset needs to be reevaluated, because what we're trying to do is really to work with the industry players to create a safe environment for the industry as a whole, right? And that kind of safe environment is good for everybody within the ecosystem. So ultimately, linking back to this topic, it's all about trust. If all the players can trust the platforms and the platforms can trust their users, there will be more opportunities that can be discovered from those kind of partnerships. I think that's the most important things. And for us, we do have all the right tools and experiences, not only for Philippines, but globally. So this is also applicable for those companies that wants to be like global gaming companies, right? They want to expand into other markets. So we do have all the tools and resources available, and we look forward to working with more open-minded players to help them onboard their users faster, and at the same time protect them from frauds.
And in the Philippines, if I'm a new starter, KYC, what's the one thing on your mind that you can give away? What's the important bit that I need to take care of when I start out as an operator?
I mean, KYC is always going to be a necessity, just to build that trust, going back to the topic, right? Just to build that trust between player and operator, but also between operator and regulator, to make sure that we are compliant, because for majority of the users, it's really about, like like echoing what you've said, ensuring that us as operators and the platforms that they do engage with and provide the information is that they can trust their information, that it's not going to get leaked, it's not going to get used for some other business or for anything else, but also the money that they are spending or investing in the game.